questions? Everybody ready? Everybody ready?
Yeah, I think so.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, here we go. Welcome to Unchained Disciples. We're in our series on seeking wholeness. This is lesson number 8 or so. For those watching on YouTube, like and subscribe. Put out a lesson every other week. So I'll be doing a long video, full lesson every other week, and the little short message every other week as well, to alternate weeks. Now, so today we're looking at dealing with hurt, sort of a continuation of last week. Last week we looked at it's okay not to be okay. So we're in this series on seeking wholeness. So I'll start off with the verse, Psalm 71, 20 through 21. It says, "You who have shown me many troubles and distresses will revive me again, and will bring me up again from the depths of the earth. May you increase my greatness and turn to comfort me." So God is talking to God, wants God to turn and comfort him. It's David writing there. So we're in our series on wholeness. So first I'll review the series we're talking about, looking at being spiritually, emotionally, and mentally healthy. So we're looking at being spiritually, emotionally, and mentally healthy, which is pretty timely in this season. There's a lot going on right now. Talking about dealing with life's current stresses and also being healed from wounds and experiences of the past, with the results being that you'll break generational curses, be able to love your neighbor as you love yourself, and that you have joy and peace in your life. So some of the traits, some of the qualities of wholeness that we've discussed are authenticity, honesty. You're not seeking external validation or approval. You're living by values and principles. Kindness is a trait of wholeness. Setting boundaries, so knowing when to say no. Living with purpose and passion. Optimism, being an optimistic person. Confidence, having healthy relationships, both genders. So friend relationships as well as romantic. Not losing control, so whether that be anger or through other means. Being free from addictions. Addressing conflict. Vulnerability. Being non-judgmental, not judging everyone. Not jealous. You can genuinely applaud the success of others. You forgive those who've wronged you from the past. You accept that God loves you as you are. You're not afraid to fail. You don't not try because you're afraid to fail. You're free from irrational fear, worry, and anxiety. And you have selfless encounters with others. So you're not giving to get. You don't complain about not being appreciated. You're giving selflessly. So that is wholeness. That is the goal of this series. So today we're looking at dealing with the hurt. So last week we looked at it's okay not to be okay. So this is sort of a continuation of that. So I'll go into a little bit of a deeper review of it, or a little bit of a longer review. So we talked about responses to being hurt. So when someone hurts you, when they offend you, or there's an injustice done against you, we talked about the fact that there's 3 types of responses you can have. Number 1 is you can be emotionally hurt. You can be emotionally hurt, so maybe you'll cry, or you become sad, or you feel it. The second response you could have is you can get angry. People get angry because when you get angry, you're kind of taking control of the situation. You can do something about it. You're taking control, and you're not necessarily feeling the hurt, and you become the person who hurt you is completely at blame, and you're the victim. Generally, is the way you see it when you're angry. And the third option is you can say, "Oh, I'm okay." You can say you're okay. You can say, "Oh, well, it doesn't matter anyway." You can say, "Oh, well, I'm better off without them," or, "Oh, I didn't really want that anyway." So you say, "Oh, you're okay," and you pretend that it didn't hurt. And so when you get angry, or when you pretend that you're okay, you never really address the pain. You never really address the hurt, and you get a little bit more broken. So every time you don't address the hurt, you get a little bit more broken and it piles up. We talked about some causes of hurt. The first one is someone hurt you. So we looked at Proverbs 14:10 that says, "The heart knows its own bitterness, and a stranger does not share its joy." So someone hurt you. So that's someone else hurt you. Someone caused you harm. Someone offended you. Someone belittled you. Someone betrayed you. Someone physically hurt you, abused you. Someone else hurt you. And we talked about the fact that it's often not the size of the hurt itself, but the affection towards the offender that determines the size of the bitterness. So how close you were to the person that can determine how much your hurt is. And I've also heard someone say that it's the size of the surprise also that determines the trauma. So if it's something you were expecting versus if it was something that it just popped up. Let's see. Welcome.
What was that category, Michael?
That was someone hurt you. Someone hurt you. So that was the first cause of hurt, is that someone hurt you.
Okay, someone hurt me. Okay.
Yes. Welcome, Kelly. Welcome. That's your first time here. This Unchained Disciples. Yeah, we're looking at dealing with hurt, reviewing last week's lesson. It's okay to be okay. Let's see. Let's see, and then the second option, so that one is someone hurt you. Another way you could be hurt is from your own sin or your own bad decisions. So your own bad decisions could have caused you hurt. Proverbs 29 says, "Who can say I have cleansed my heart? I am pure from my sin." So you may be hurt because of something you did. The example I give is you threw a rock up in the air, and then 2 minutes later, you got hit in the head with a rock. And you're saying, "Oh, God, why'd you let me get hit in the head with a rock?" It's like, well, no, that wasn't God. That's a consequence of your actions. So something you did is a natural consequence resulted in hurt. So you didn't show up to work, so they fired you. You got caught cheating, so the person broke up with you. It's a natural consequence of your actions that caused the hurt. So something you did caused the hurt. It's a natural consequence. So it was a sowing and reaping. It's sowing and reaping. The third way you can hurt is just you're broken by life. So sometimes life just happens. So we looked at Proverbs 15:13. It says, a joyful heart makes a cheerful face, but when the heart is sad, the spirit is broken. Sometimes things just happen in life, whether that be financial, maybe, the stock market crashed. You were good with your finances, but, the stock market crashed, or the housing market crashed, or it could be emotional. It could be a relationship. It could, a loss of a loved one. You were doing everything right, and then the person got sick, ill. It could be spiritual. It could be your parents. It could be your own health. So it was no fault of your own. It wasn't something that someone targeted you out to do. That your company went bankrupt. So it wasn't something you did. It wasn't something someone targeted you. It was just kind of life. Life just happened. That's another cause of hurt. That was broken by life. Then the last one we looked at was believing a lie. It's kind of two. Believing a lie or willful blindness. So believing a lie, an example of that is a stronghold. So a stronghold, say you believe a stronghold, the Bible talks about stronghold, it's not a sin that you do, but a stronghold is the lie that you tell yourself that justifies the sin. So it's the lie you tell yourself to make you say the sin is okay. You may say, "Oh, well, the Bible's old. It doesn't really account for things today," or it was written back in a patriarchal society by men, so it doesn't really matter. It's a lie you tell yourself to justify your sin, or well, everybody else does it. everybody else does it, so it's not really that bad, you know. Nowadays, it's just okay. So it's whatever the lie is you tell yourself to justify your sin. And then the last one was willful blindness. So willful blindness is you refuse to know something that could be known. So it's like you're ignoring the engine light on your car. You see the engine light, but you just keep on driving. And that's willful blindness. And today we're going to go deep into an example of that. So you'll fully, we didn't get too deep into it last time, so you get a full example of what that means. Willful blindness.
Oh, willful blindness, yeah.
Yes. And we talked about, so a lot of the things that happen, we're talking about causes of hurt. So a lot of times people will blame God. And so we talked about the fact that there are situations where God will do things to make you grow, to grow your character, or to strengthen you. But everything that happens wasn't necessarily God. So like with the sowing and reaping, you know, you did something wrong and there was a natural consequence. It wasn't, you know, necessarily God that did it. And so we looked at the fact that, you know, some people, you know, we say that to renew your mind, you have to surrender to God, but it's hard to surrender to something or someone you don't fully trust is out for your best interest. So I talked about the fact that God's will isn't always done. So we want to do God's will, but everything that happened wasn't necessarily what God wanted. And so a couple of verses I use as an example of that. The first was 1 Thessalonians 5:18. It says, "In everything give thanks, for this is God's will for you in Christ Jesus." So it's God's will that you give thanks in everything. So no matter whether it's a good situation or bad situation, not you give thanks for it. You're not giving thanks for the layoff. You're not giving thanks for getting slapped in the supermarket. You're not giving thanks for it. You're giving thanks in that, you know, even though that happened, you're still thanking God. You're thanking God for everything he did do for you. And it's God's will that we always give thanks, but we don't always give thanks. So the Bible clearly states that God's will is that we do give thanks. And then we looked at 1 Thessalonians 4:3. Patrice, you have that? 1 Thessalonians 4:3?
Yes. For this is the will of God, your sanctification, that you should abstain from sexual immorality.
Okay, so Paul clearly says that the will of God is that we abstain from sexual immorality. So if you're not married, that we don't have sex. So it clearly says that is the will of God. But many of us can contest to the fact that that wasn't always the case. So the will of God didn't always happen. So that's the will of God so even if it did happen for all of us here, that's the will of God for every Christian. So if it didn't happen for one Christian in the world at any time in history, that means God's will wasn't done. So God's will isn't always done. That's why Jesus tells us to pray, thy will be done. So we want to help God's will be done. We pray that God's will be done. We help God's will be done. But so that everything that bad, hurtful happens to you wasn't necessarily God's will. It could be one of those other reasons. All right. And then, so right now, yeah, we're reviewing the last week's lesson. Then we looked at signs that you have been hurt. Signs that you have been hurt. So how can you tell that you're still broken, that you still need to be healed, that you're still hurt? And so one of the signs that we looked at was that your reaction to hurt or reaction to issues. So the size of your reaction. So if you react, if someone is hurt, if someone is still wounded, they tend to overreact when things happen. So let's say someone here starts to answer and someone else interrupts them. And then that person here, you know, yells, cusses the person out and for 5 minutes and then gets off the call. You know, we would all think, well, that was a bit of an overreaction. That's a sign of hurt. So what it means is that they weren't just reacting to what happened now, they're reacting to pain from the past. So maybe, you said something to them, they're reacting to, the guy that hurt them that did the same thing previously. Or they're reacting to, another situation. So they're reacting to pain from the past. So the size of the reaction is an indicator that someone hasn't been healed. Their response isn't appropriate for the situation. So so it's like that something, someone waitress accidentally drops their coffee, and they get up and yelling in and curse her out and everything, and it's like, okay, that wasn't, so a reaction is appropriate, but the size of the reaction is inappropriate. That's a sign that the person still hasn't been healed.
So what is the heading that this comes under, Michael? I'm sorry that.
Oh, that's okay. This is signs that you have been hurt, that you've been hurt.
Oh, signs that you've been hurt. Okay.
Yeah, or signs that you're still hurt. Signs that you haven't healed. Signs that you haven't healed from the hurt. More appropriately, signs that you haven't healed from the hurt. And so something else I've saw since the lesson is not just the size of the reaction, but also the length of the reaction is also an indicator that you've been hurt. So, someone, you're talking here, someone overtalks you, cuts you off, an emotional reaction is okay. It's fine to have an emotional reaction. Maybe the size of it may be bad, but then if tomorrow you're at work and you're snapping at your coworker, and your coworker's like, "What's wrong with you?" and you're like, "Well, somebody interrupted me when I was speaking in Bible study last night." So not just the size of the reaction, but now it's gone on for days. 3-4 days later, you're still mad because that person called you by the wrong name yesterday. You're still mad because that person said that thing about your political candidate 2 days ago. You're still mad because that person cut you off in traffic. But it's 2 or 3 days later. So now it's not an emotional reaction. Now it's a mood. It's been days, so now this is a mood. You're in this mood because of what happened. But then, Thanksgiving comes around. Now it's 2, 3, 4 weeks, 2, 3 months later, and you're still mad. You're mad because the person interrupted you at Bible study, and you've been mad since then. So you've been mad for 2 months. So now it's not just a mood, now it's a temperament. Now that's called a temperament. It's like you're still have a certain mood, because of something that happened to you 2-3 months ago. Now it's a temperament. Now 4 or 5 years from now, you're snapping at people, and you're like, "Well, what's wrong with you?" And you're like, "Well, 4 years ago, I was in this Bible study. I started to say something, and somebody interrupted me. They apologized, but, so it's like now your response, you've been holding it for years, and that's called a personality. So when you're hurt, you still have a response. You've been carrying it all this time. That's your personality. Now that's your personality. So some people's personality reflects being hurt a long time ago. Years later, your mood, your temperament, your emotional responses reflects something that happened a long time ago. Now it becomes your personality. So that's called your refractory period. Is how long it takes you to get back to normal. So that's a sign of how hurt you are. How long it takes you to get back to normal after being hurt. So the size of your reaction after being hurt and how long it takes you to recover from it are indicators of whether you've been healed. Hey, Lorraine, welcome. So those are indicators, the size of your reaction and how long it takes you to recover. And so once we're healed,
Michael,
yes.
sorry, that shouldn't be confused with learning about boundaries and establishing boundaries with people, right? Not to be confused by that, right?
Correct. So this is you're mad. So or not mad, but you're mad or you're angry from something that happened 3 years ago. So it has nothing to do with any new person now. It has nothing to do with, setting a boundary with someone. It's just you. This is outside of any calls from someone else or someone. So this is just you. So so the boundaries are, you want to set boundaries someone else, maybe so they won't do that again. But this is, you, with no one else has done anything yet to call, no one has done anything yet. You're still reacting from something in the past.
You haven't learned how to let it go or to deal with it.
Right.
To let it go.
Yes, exactly. Haven't learned to deal with it or let it go. Yeah. You're still holding it. You never addressed it. And so sometimes we develop defense mechanisms to address it. We develop defense mechanisms so we don't get hurt again. So we've been hurt before, so now we develop defense mechanisms so we don't get hurt again. So one I talked about is a defensive response. So have you ever heard somebody say, "Oh, you don't want to see me when I'm angry. You don't want to see me when I'm angry." Is that right? So it's like, you don't want to see angry me, or you don't want to see jealous me, or you don't want to see lied to me. It's like, because you know that I'm going to go into basically kind of another personality. It's like I've developed this defense mechanism that is going to prevent me from getting hurt. It's like I turn angry to keep from getting hurt, or I turn jealous, or I do something. I have a reaction. I have a mechanism that I do actively to prevent me from getting hurt again. So it's basically something you do to prevent you from getting hurt again. And then the other type of defense mechanism is a suppressing response. So instead of something suppressing.
Oh, suppressing.
Yes, suppressing. So instead of actively doing something, you're not doing things in order to prevent yourself from getting hurt. You're holding back. So you got embarrassed when you were little, so now you don't do anything. I'm not going to dance when I go to a club. I'm not going to raise my hand in class. You hold yourself back so you don't get hurt again. Or you self-sabotage. You start to reach a successful goal, you sabotage it yourself so you don't fail and it hurts. You're about to go to the altar and you do something, crazy to sabotage it yourself so you don't get hurt. Or you deny that you have feelings at all. You don't really feel anymore. You don't let yourself love anyone. You don't let yourself feel anymore. So you're suppressing yourself in order to prevent yourself from being hurt. Or you don't try. I'm not going to try anything new because you don't want to fail again, so you don't try. You don't allow yourself to emotionally invest in people. So it's a suppressing response. You don't do something in order not to get hurt again. So that's another way that you can tell, or that's another response that people have for being hurt. And then lastly was judging others. Judging others is a sign that you haven't healed or been hurt. So if people always say, "I hate when people do such and such. I hate when people do this," or "I hate this person here. They always do this," or so it's like what. So you want to look at what you're judging of other people and ask yourself, is there something about what that person is doing that I really judge about myself? It's like, oh, I hate when people are always loud, or I hate when people always cut people off, or I hate that person is trying to do this. And so is it something that you really judge about yourself? If it's a pet peeve you have, it may be something you judge about yourself. Or number two, it could be something that a part of you that you suppressed. So now someone is always center of attention and showing out, and you're like, oh, they're always showing off. But you suppressed your, you don't want to be embarrassed, so you suppressed your outwardness, or you suppress. So it's like something that is it something that you judge about yourself, or is it something that you don't do anymore that you suppressed in yourself that you're judging the other person for? So that's something to pay attention to. And then we ended off talking about the fact that God can heal you. God can heal you. And who has Psalms 147:3? Okay, Tasha?
173, this is King James Bible. He healeth the broken in heart, and bindeth up their wounds.
Amen. Right. So God can heal you. You take it to God, release it to God, and God can heal you from it. And we're going to be continuing on that today. Any thoughts from last week? So last week also, Angel gave her testimony, and then a lot of people responded that they had pretty much a similar testimony, a relationship testimony. But any thoughts from last week, or from what I just went over? No.
I had to end a relationship with someone because they had an issue with a coworker, to the fact that they had gotten to physically fighting each other on the job. And listening to him tell that same story like multiple times, it let me know that he didn't know how to let things go. Because he would always bring up in a conversation where he could always bring that incident up. And I was like, how long ago was this? Oh, this happened like 6 months ago. This happened a year or so ago. And I was like, you don't know how to let things go.
Yeah.
And you haven't dealt with that within yourself. And it gotten so bad that he and this gentleman had to be put on different shifts so they didn't have to interact with each other.
Wow. Yeah. That's how it can be if you haven't healed from something from the past. Yeah, you can't let it go. It's like everything is personal. And you just want to. Yeah, that's a good example. Thank you. Okay. So now, talked about willful blindness. So I have a long example of it. I didn't really get too much into what that meant last week. So a lot of these causes, a lot of things that we think are some reasons, can actually be attributed to willful blindness. So this is refusing to acknowledge issues. So this is actually an issue of mine that I need to work on. Refusing to acknowledge issues. So refusing to acknowledge issues. So when issues come up with relationships or even with just life, your check engine light. So, but specifically with relationships, with friendships, not necessarily just romantic relationships, but friendships. When they arise, they need to be discussed and negotiated. So if when issues happen, they need to be discussed in a timely manner and negotiated before they grow big. Because if you don't discuss them, they'll grow big. And but to discuss it, both parties have to acknowledge that it exists. So a lot of times we'll just ignore things. We won't say anything, and sometimes it'll come up, you're fighting about something, and then somebody said, well, what about this? And it was like, well, it's like, you didn't bring that up until this argument. It's like, why, that happened 4 months ago. Why didn't you bring it up 4 months ago? So it's like, we need to bring issues up. Otherwise they build up and they cause blow-ups later or bigger things. A lot of times we tell ourselves, well, the reason I'm not going to bring it up is because I'm a peace-loving person. I just want to make peace. But a lot of times that's just a cop-out for being afraid to bring it up.
So, Michael, you said willful blindness. It's refusing to do what? What did you call it?
Refusing to discuss issues that arise in a
To discuss.
relationship.
I'm making notes, and so.
Oh yeah, that's good.
Refusing
Yeah,
to discuss
issues that arise.
issues. Okay.
Yeah. And so we talked about, the service engine light example, but now we're going to talk about a specific example. So this specific example, you may or may not can relate to personally, but it will give you an understanding of what it is. So this example is a psychologist gave this example of a client. He had a woman whose husband cheated on her. So you may or may not have had someone cheat on you in a relationship, or you may have not have cheated, so you can switch yourself around, but it's more the concept of the details of it you'll get. And so this is the 21 and up portion of the Bible study. So send your kids out of the room. So this is well, anyway. All right, that's my disclaimer. This is good, yeah, because this is this is a deep example. It's a deep example. Okay, it's a trigger warning. So the couple, the man cheated on the woman. So she came talking to the psychologist. So the couple, they hadn't had sex in months, and they never talked about that. They never talked about why they weren't having sex anymore. And so, it was like, well, maybe she didn't like sex. Or maybe he was a selfish lover. Or maybe he couldn't satisfy her. But none of that was ever discussed. So if it had been discussed, maybe it would have been an issue immediately, but it could have saved a long time things that happened down the line. The husband, maybe he was immature and selfish. Or maybe he felt that she had started disrespecting him, but he never addressed it. He never brought it up. She was disrespecting him, and the disrespect turned into contempt. And then maybe it actually turned into hate, but no one ever talked about it. They never discussed it. They just left things foggy. They left things foggy and unsaid, and they just went along with it. And then after the fact, she, now she became a martyr. And she would tell her friends how he had cheated on her. And maybe she actually enjoyed the martyrdom more than the relationship, because now all her friends will say, I don't see how you can be married to such a terrible man. You're a saint. You deserve so much more. How courageous you are. You're such a courageous woman for going through this. And she enjoyed the attention of the martyrdom. And maybe she didn't actually even really like her husband. Maybe she didn't really like men, and she still doesn't. Not that she's homosexual, but that she just kind of has a hatred for men, like her mother did. And therefore she treats men how her mother did. But her mother treats men how her mother did. And so she's just mimicking that behavior. And it's just been unconsciously transmitted down from generation to generation to generation. Because no one ever talked about it. No one ever addressed it. And the husband, maybe he liked being the victim too. Him and his buddies would talk about, the single guys. Oh, you better stay single, because when you get married, you're not going to have no more. Oh, he would complain to his friends, and that gave him an excuse to get a mistress. Which he may have wanted to do that anyway. So now he had an excuse. Or maybe but he never talked about that. Or maybe he actually was using it to justify the resentment that he felt towards women. because of all his single years, all the rejection he got, and all the not returned phone calls, and all the meals that he bought to turn into let's be friends, and he resented women, and now this was kind of payback for all of that. But that was never addressed, and that was never discussed. Or maybe both of them, they kind of wanted to mess their marriage up as revenge to God. This was revenge against God.
Explain that one.
Because, God wants marriage, and, God, it wasn't all it turned out to be, and just all this stuff that God has done for me, and all this stuff that God has done to me, He let me lose my mother, He let me, all this stuff He did, so this is kind of me getting Him back.
Is another word for that maybe blame?
Blame, yeah. Blame, yeah. And so they ignored all the marital issues, and they never talked about them. They just let it pile up. They never talked about it. And so that's the way, so that's how you can compound problems. It's like when an issue comes up, don't notice it. If you want to have a big problem in the future, when a small issue comes up, don't notice it. When a small issue comes up, don't react. When a small issue comes up, don't discuss it. Don't consider it. Don't work for peace when there's no conflict. Don't take responsibility for it. That's how small issues turn into big issues. So the big issue is what we'll point to and what we'll look at, but the small issues are what led up to it. There's something we didn't address. It's the little things that didn't get addressed. So what if instead, as soon as she was no longer satisfied, that she brought it up and discussed it and verbalized it as soon as it happened, and they discussed it. What could have been different? Or what if as soon as they abstained from sex and she was okay with it, what if she had discussed that? Or what if he had brought it up and discussed it? Or what if she discovered that her resentment was actually because of her father? Or even the fact that she lives in a patriarchal society as a whole, and she has resentment for that, and that's affected her. What if that had been addressed? What if she had addressed that? She could have fixed that and been stronger. If we could have continuously, honestly risked conflict for the hope of a better future, a peaceful future. So risking conflict today for the hope of a more peaceful future. Then the marriage could have been happier, and the marriage would have been founded on rock instead of founded on sand. So when we ignore issues in relationships, we damage them. We damage the relationships because we're really living a lie. When we don't address issues, we're living a lie. So what type of things do people ignore in relationships? What are some types of things that people ignore in relationships and they just don't address? Like, or even not, so now we're looking at, so that was a marriage example. That was a marriage. So whether it's marriage or dating, what type of things do people ignore? And so if you look at dating, the one of the things you see is that people, they don't address things that are maybe outside of their boundaries. They have boundaries, but they don't state them. They do things outside of their boundaries, and then eventually they get into a relationship, or maybe then they get married, and then they want to assert the boundary. You know what? I really hate hiking. I know we've been going hiking every weekend, but I don't really like that. Or and it's like, now you're changing. Now, this person got a whole different person. It's like if it would have been addressed up front, you're a different person. It's like, why not address the things up front? Address them early on, instead of leading to believe, instead of presenting them to your representative. They've been dating your representative all this time, and then it's like, you know what? I'm not really a vegan. I love ribs. I know we've been vegans for all these years, but I'm not really a vegan.
I have an issue where thing about the cheating was he incorporated my children with the cheating. So my eldest son has come to grips with himself and with his father in the last couple of weeks on how he didn't feel, well, he's letting him know now how that it messed up him being a good mate, a good father to his children. And he's coming to grips with that within himself, and he's letting it be known to his stepfather that if you hadn't shown me the way that you treated my mom,
right.
I would be a better person for the people that I've dated before and the women that I've had relationships. And he let him know that you basically scarred me, but I have to get over that now that he's older. He's like, I have to learn how to be a better person that you have been in your life.
Yeah. So yeah, it's good that he recognized it and is actively trying to address it. So what was his response? Do you know?
He has since been he's been apologetic.
Oh, that's
and
good.
And he let him know that he's admitting his fault and whatnot. Because it wasn't just my eldest son, it was my eldest daughter, my youngest daughter, and it's like it's still a vicious cycle because they know this stuff about him, and he still continues, even though we're not together any longer, but he's still doing it to like his current mate.
Right. So
it's like a vicious cycle that he's not come to grips with whatever in himself, that he still does this action.
Right. Well, the good thing is it's not going to be a cycle that goes generation to generation. So I mean, if he admits it, him addressing it, I guess that's on him. And if he's not, so I mean, there's always a connection with the kids that you'll have, but I guess we pray that he gets better, but I guess the good thing is that your son and maybe your other children are noticing it and hopefully addressing it, the tendencies in themselves and the habits in themselves.
I think it affected my oldest son more so than my other kids because he took my son with him a lot of the times when he was doing his escapades. Well, he's basically doing things, and it was kind of like giving my son. He said it made him think that women weren't worth. He didn't see the worth. He just kind of used them for the longest time, and now he's seeing where he made mistakes and stuff.
Is he letting your son know that?
No, my son is letting his dad know. He let his dad know.
Oh, I see. That he himself was doing those things.
Yes, he let him know because he let him know. Me seeing you do what you did to my mother, I'm still having those issues now, and I can't be the person that I should be for women that I come in contact with.
Well, I mean, I think it's a big step that he recognized it, and then he took the step to address his dad for the. So I mean, he sounds like he can be on a path to bettering himself.
I just want to say, Kelly, thank you for telling your story. And I know, like, with my family, they didn't really teach me how to have good relationships. There's a lot of, like, divorce and just crazy stuff that I saw when I was younger. And so, yeah, we definitely need to have family that teaches us how to be in good relationships.
Yes.
But if we don't, then the responsibility falls on us, unfortunately, to learn that. But it does make it harder. It's always nice to be able to see good relationships and in order to, like, be in a good one when you get older.
Right.
So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. So what type of small things do people ignore? Like, They don't like the fact that the person wakes up so early or so late, or
They slap their lips when they chew.
I've heard that. Not about. I've heard that before. Yeah, I've heard
They
that
talk
multiple
with
times.
with food in their mouth, and they partially spit food at you while they're talking.
Okay. Yeah. Well,
They have a favorite shirt that should have been burned like 20 years ago.
well. All right. Wait a minute now. Lorraine, did you ignore that? I can't see. I don't think you ignored it. I don't think you're the ignorer.
I think it got lost somewhere in the laundry. Like it never came back. I don't know what happened to it. Maybe you got rats in the garage.
Okay. Yeah. Or maybe they don't respond consistently, or maybe they flirt subtly, do actions that look like flirting, or looking at other people, or they they stop trying to be attractive to their mate. So those are some things that are issues with people, and they don't get talked about. They don't get talked
Or
about.
when they get caught in lies and you know that they lied and stuff, and you just kind of let it slide by. But then when you feel as though
Yeah.
you get, and you start to realize that this is a consistent thing with them, and that's when it really becomes an issue because you let it go by too many times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So why do people let things remain vague and not express them, or don't express their
Because some people
issues?
just don't know how.
Yeah.
They don't like
Some people aren't
confrontation.
good. Some people aren't good at articulating their thoughts.
Yeah.
Like,
Confrontation.
Like-
They don't want
Yeah, that's
confrontation.
true. They don't like confrontation.
Make waves. They don't want to make waves.
And some people just do it because they're in a relationship. They want to be in a relationship, so they
Right.
let things slide because they don't want to be alone.
Right.
Yes.
So I think
Wow.
I think my big issue back in the day, before Jesus, I think mine was self-esteem.
Self-esteem?
Mine was, I'm not good enough to have this person,
Mm.
so
Well, or I'm not good enough to have someone better. I deserve better. Not believing that you deserve better or you don't deserve that type of treatment.
yeah.
That you just, that this is what it is. So just deal with it.
Or this is
Yeah.
how relationships
And that God
are.
dealt you.
And that's a problem with abused people, be it physically abused or verbally abused, be it a man or a woman, because it happens on both sides of the fence. Because men can be talked to a certain way where they're made to feel like they're not even worth the salt and bread or something, and the same can go for a woman.
Salt and bread.
That's a whole
There is salt and bread.
I was gonna say something like what Kelly said, like wanting to be in a relationship, and if you're attracted to the person and you want to make the relationship work, sometimes you might feel like there's a red flag, and then you overlook it, going, I'm gonna do what it takes to make the relationship work, or it's not a big deal, and maybe I'm just seeing things, and maybe that's just a one-time thing or whatever.
Right.
This is why we're supposed to be dating for a while, to get to know those things, right? So we have to be good communicators, because basically we gotta advocate for ourselves and for our hearts. We have to guard our hearts.
And God gives us discernment, because when you see that red flag, you know it's something wrong. But we as human beings, and in the need of trying to be in a relationship, we confess, or we just let things slide to the fact that,
Yeah.
well, maybe he won't look at another woman like that again, or maybe he won't flirt with her while I'm standing right here, maybe that's a one-time thing or whatever, and it becomes a consistent thing,
Yeah.
and then that's when our self-esteem becomes so low that we just accept whatever they do.
Yeah, or maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe.
Yeah.
For
Okay.
me, I think it's embarrassment because you don't want nobody to know, oh, y'all broke up? What happened? And then you got to discuss everything, and you got to tell everybody what happened, and you're like, whoa.
No, you don't. You don't.
No, you don't, really.
You don't have to. That should be a fear.
But I understand what she's saying, because that
Yeah.
happens when you are open, like when you bring someone you're dating around your circle, that's
Yeah.
your friends, and then people see you and then they don't. It's like, okay, well, what happened?
Like, what happened? Yeah.
But then you get when you break it off with that person, then you be like, you'll get those comments. Well, I didn't think he was. He wasn't worth your time, or you wasted your time being with him because he wasn't the right one for you, or I didn't like him. That's what.
I never liked him anyway.
No way.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why you don't owe anybody an explanation.
Right.
All they need to know is that you're not with that person anymore.
Were you gonna say something, Angel?
Yeah, I would agree that there's sometimes it's self-esteem, sometimes it's fear, but I think sometimes it's also, hey, I'm not perfect, that person's not perfect. Why do you want to keep bringing this stuff up? And, or why do you want to bring, or what's the love covers a multitude of sins? Why do you want to bring up every little thing or every little problem? You know what? I'm not perfect. You're not perfect.
So,
Okay, so
yeah.
And keeping the peace, but there comes a time when yes, it's important to bring
You got
stuff
raised
up
with fan.
Yeah.
and to have the boundaries. But there's also times to just let stuff go.
Right. Yeah. If you, so I guess if you really did let it go. So I mean, if it doesn't, I mean, it's one thing to you let it go and it didn't bother you, but it's another thing if it does bother you. Didn't really let it go. You just didn't say anything about it, but you didn't let it go. You think about it. You worry about it. You're concerned about it.
That's true.
Those are
and sometimes it's just learning about boundaries.
yeah boundaries.
It's learning about boundaries. I mean, I didn't say anything for years in a relationship because I didn't understand that boundaries were important. It's like, you okay, I'm supposed to be the peacekeeper. I'm supposed to be understanding. I'm supposed to be loving, and not understanding that those boundaries were important. I think that was my issue for a long time, that I didn't understand that boundaries were important. I didn't understand that communication, by letting stuff go, it could lead, kind of like you were saying, to a reaction, to a mood, to a temperament.
right.
What I'm sort of hearing in this too is like you have to pick your battles.
Yeah.
You have to kind of be selective about what things you're going to address and which ones are okay to let go.
Yeah, definitely. Because
But Michael, like based on I was hearing what Angel was saying. Like if I knew when I was younger what I know now, I would ask everything. I'd be interrogating during a date because
wait, say that again.
when I was younger, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, so when I was younger and less experienced in dating and everything and relationships, you have more of a pure heart and you don't have the experience from the past to teach you like what you should be looking for. And now it's different, and I'm like, man, if I had just asked all those questions up front, I could have avoided a lot of like failed relationships. And so now I'm like, just ask everything. Just put it all on the table. And if they don't like it, that's too bad for them, That's fine, because then you don't have to deal with their junk if you get married to them.
Good point. I told my daughter when she was dating, I said, you better ask all the questions. I said, because right now you both are just putting on your best face. Pastor Paul used to say, you better turn that box like Jack in the Box. Keep turning it until he pops out. Find out who the real person is. Because do it while you're dating, and because unless you're committed and you're in it, then you find out it's too late.
Yeah.
And then don't. And once you find out the part that's not so pleasant, don't go into it anyway, thinking that I can change him.
No, you can't
A lot
do
of
that.
people do. No, you can't do that. You can't enter a godly relationship thinking
Right.
that you can go in and then you're going to change that person and excuse their behavior.
Right. Yeah,
That's the place to be.
so there's two sides of it. So you want, in the relationship you want to ask. You don't want to go though and, the first or second date and with an interview, you got 50 questions asking, interview, because it's, you want to, get to know the person. It's not about the resume, it's like,
Yeah, you do. No, I'm kidding. No,
Well-
I mean, you don't want to interview them. You don't want to interrogate them. I was kidding. But you do want to, like, things that are important for you, you do want to have them brought up in a civil way into the conversation. Because those are things that that you're not going to be able to, like, live with long term.
right. I mean,
You can
you
pick
got-
up from just listening to them.
you got to,
Hearing, the things that they say, their actions. You can watch their actions, how they react to things, and in particular, things that they say when you get in a conversation about maybe how they view their family or their parents. Is that person, do they honor their parents? Do they treat their mother right? Any number of things. Just, you don't even have to ask a lot of questions, but once you observe those things, you might want to, question he or she about it.
right. Yeah, you want to get all your questions answered before you take the relationship to the next level. But you don't necessarily have to get them all answered before the check comes.
Yeah.
What's your blood type? How much money you make? What's your, you don't gotta. But you don't want to get into a relationship without getting. But so all right. So let's see. So the remaining vague. So there's a difference between boundaries and not asking, not addressing an issue. So the addressing issue. So the boundary is kind of you have a stance, a set stance. A boundary is you have a set stance on it. It's like he's not, that I'm not gonna let this other person hit me. That's a boundary. It's like, and it's but there are also things that needs to be discussed. So it's not necessary that the person was wrong. It's not necessary that you were right, but we need to discuss it. You just need to negotiate it and discuss it. This person did this, but it's an issue for you, so you discuss it. So it may be that they explain why they do it, or you may agree that they keep doing it, but it needs to be discussed. I mean, you decide whether it's a deal breaker for you or not, obviously. But so everything that you want, it's not like, everything I want, this other person needs to change. This other person needs to do everything exactly the way I want it done. They didn't fold my bed military style by 6 in the morning and have my breakfast made. So I'm going to go discuss it with them, because that's the issue with me. They didn't squeeze. They only squeezed 2 oranges. I wanted 3, so they should have just went to the store and got it. I don't care if it's COVID and they had to wait in line. They should have went to the store and squeezed that other orange, because I wanted 3. I usually drink 3, and so it needs to be negotiated, because you may be unreasonable, so there's boundaries where there's no discussion, but there's other things that need to be just brought up and discussed and negotiated.
I think either side, you have criteria of expectation that you want someone to meet before you go too deep. into a relationship.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and you have criteria. Yeah, you definitely want to get those understood before a relationship. I mean, I know some people talk, well, is he a Christian? I think so. It's like, wait a minute, your boyfriend, you think so? It's like that should have been up there with, are you sure that he's really a man? That should have been just as equally important. That's just as it's like, oh, he got all this and this, but he used to go to church when he was a kid, so maybe he'll go. But anyway, so I'll go on. So some reasons people don't discuss issues or they don't want to get hurt. They don't want to get hurt. But the hurt may not be fatal, and they refuse to. Sometimes they don't get specific. They refuse to specify something, and they act like the problem doesn't exist. So they don't want to precisely know from their friend or from the person they're dating. So this is friendships as well. This is not just a dating type of thing. They're addressing issues. This is friendships as well. So sometimes people don't want to bring it up. They don't want to address it because it may be painful. They don't specify, because if they specify, hey, this and this and this is what I want, and now the person doesn't do it, now it's clear that you're not getting what you want. And now, now it hurts. Because before it was kind of murky. It wasn't clear. They weren't doing it. It kind of upset you, but you never really said it. You never discussed it. So the fact that they're not doing it, it doesn't really hurt as bad. But so some people don't bring it up because, well, what if they don't do it? What if I bring this up, and it doesn't change? So people don't bring it up. And then the other point was what you guys already brought up. They put up with the hurt because you don't want to be embarrassed. You don't want to be alone. You want to be accepted. So you want to admit when there's a problem. So when there's a problem, admit it. So this is, so when there's a problem with a relationship, admit that you're unhappy. If you're not happy about something, admit it to yourself. Admit it to yourself and bring it up. And, it may be the case that, what's going on there? Who's that? Oh, is that you, Kenneth?
No, that's not me.
Not me.
Oh, it's Kelly? All right.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Oh, no, I heard some crunching in the back.
No, I'm sorry, I just tried to open up a bag.
Oh.
That's what it sounds
Okay.
like.
You could mute it.
Wish y'all were here, don't have some evidence.
Okay. We can mute it. All right. So admit the issue. Address the issue. But it's not necessary that, okay, this person has to do it your way. Because maybe a normal. So maybe it could be a case that any normal person would have the same issue, but it may be also the case that you're whiny, immature, and selfish. That could be the case too. So consider both options. So it's not the case. Some people say, well, if I bring up an issue, they just need to change. They need to change. They need to change immediately. If they love you, then they're going to change immediately. That's not how it works. That's what children expect, but that's not how it works. You need to negotiate that. People have free will, people have their own values, and people have difference of opinions. So sometimes everything is different than what you do. It doesn't make it wrong. If somebody does something different than what you do, doesn't mean it's wrong. So there's you can take it too far. So don't take it too far.
Michael, if you find out that someone does something that you're not happy with or you don't think you can live with, what should you do at that point?
In the sense that so I think is it something that would be a one-time thing, or is it something like a character reveals something about their character that you can't deal with, or is it? I think it depends on the thing. What?
Yeah, I guess I was basically looking for, like, you can still be friends with them, but it's a red flag, and you probably want to not pursue anything further
So
with that person.
if you're looking, if it's a romantic relationship, then there are things that are deal breakers. I mean, this applies to friends as well. But if it's a romantic relationship, there are things that should be deal breakers. You know, there are things that are deal breakers, and you should, you know, you have your own list of what's a deal breaker for you. You know, one of them should be that they're a Christian. You know, you may have things that are deal breakers. You know, just and if they're not, then if you have deal breakers, then you should get those. Yeah, you should get those addressed before you get too emotionally invested. And so it's not necessarily that you have to get them all answered on the first date. It's just you don't get emotionally invested until you get them all answered. So it's like you're not planning, you know, your wedding colors and say, okay, well, he's this tall, so this person wouldn't work as a bridesmaid. You know, you don't get all involved before you get, if you have your deal breakers, before your deal breakers are all answered. You know, so it's.
I think what she's asking is she's in the middle of it all, and most of her questions may have been answered, but now she's finding out something that's not meeting her expectations. I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, she's asking what does she do about it once you reach that conclusion or discovery. What do you do? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, I mean,
Yes.
Yeah, I would discuss it, have that discussion, and be honest about it. And you'd have to just end up saying, you know, given these points and the times that they've come up, I don't think that we can continue this relationship because I think you're looking for something different and I'm looking for something different. So I don't think that we should prolong this relationship any longer.
right. I mean, and they may not be looking for something different, but yeah, you're expressing your side, and yeah, that's good. Yeah. Okay, so some of the results of being hurt. So when people are hurt, these are some of the things that happen to people once they be hurt. So some we talked about, you become a martyr. So some people, they want to always talk about the past. They want to tell everybody about what they've been through. You know, they always have a sad look on their face, so you can say, what's wrong? And then they're ready with their story. They got a story, and it's the same story that they told you 15 times before, and you heard them telling other people, and it's every week they got the same story. And we want to be sensitive to people's past, but we don't want to validate it as a crutch for them, though. And so I mean, people can use their past to inspire other people, but then there are other people that you can also use your past to get attention. People want to always give you the sad story so they can, you know, it's like, oh, poor baby. You're like, yeah, it was so tough, and they just.
You say you want to remain a victim because you get something out of it, and it's
right.
That attention.
Yeah, you get the attention.
Yeah.
And they reference their life based on the point of the pain. It's like their identity is, I'm a survivor of this, I'm a victim of this, versus their identity being going back to the point of, say, when Jesus entered their life. You know, instead of identifying that as the defining moment of their life, they use a defining moment of their life as when I had this hurt. And their life is marked by this hurtful event. And that's what they want to talk about it to everybody. They talk about that more than they talk about Jesus. You know, they want everybody they meet, they're in the bank line telling everybody, oh, and he did this and he did that. It's like, it's like, okay, I'm just trying to cash my check.
The way I've handled that is I ask them, where is the victory? You know, they've come to me with the same victim thing, and they're not getting out of it. They just keep repeating it and going over and over. It's like, I thought we had this discussion, so where is the victory? You know, there's victory to be had. So share that with me. We've been here before, so next time we talk, let's talk about the victory that you have. Then they don't want to come back and talk to me about the same thing anymore.
That's good. That's good.
I think that's because some people get stuck and they don't know how to move on and they live their life in that same circle, and everything and everyone has hurt them, and they don't know how to look at the victory, because when it, like for the fact of bringing up my past with my ex-husband, I had an argument with God, and I was like, why did you let me go through all of this? This hurt and this angers with this person for so many years and stuff. And it was like a flashback where he showed me 3 different times that he tried to remove this person from my life and to basically save me. And that's my testimony, because once I had this argument and God showed me where he tried to remove this person, and he said the 3rd time I had to hit you where it hurt for you to be understanding that he's not the person I have for you. Once I know that my testimony is I made it through with God's help. And even to this day, I'm single, I'm doing what I have to do for myself and my family, but it's nothing but God that brought me through. That's my testimony.
Amen. Amen.
So you can have a testimony, you can have an issue that you dealt with, and you can let people know without still staying in that same position that God brought you out of that, and you can use that to help somebody else.
Right. Yeah, you can definitely use it as a testimony. You just don't want to use it as a crutch to the and to and you don't want
to gain attention.
To gain attention, yeah, and let it prevent you from moving forward. You don't want to stay focused on
That's
it.
the problem with a lot of people. They don't know how to let that hurt go and look at the blessing. Like Kenny said, what's your testimony? What's your blessing that you got out of that hurt? What you learned from dealing with this person, or be it a friend or ex-lover or whatever the case is? You dissolved your relationship with that person. What was your lesson? What was your outcome? Where did God bring you from? Because even as a friend, you have friends that you know that have upset you, and you've never said anything to them because you're trying to keep the peace and keep that friendship with them. But when God removes that person from you, what is the lesson that you learn? And that's where people get stuck, because they don't look at the lesson that God has brought them to see.
Yeah.
And that's why they don't get out of that circle that they're into.
Right. And another thing that happens is they become
I wanted to say that
who was it?
I think in some cases when that repetitive hurt is brought up is the friends that I have, the relationships that I've been with them. For me, I see hurt as a form of grief. Because hurt it's not always something that can be recovered overnight. And when I see someone who is constantly bringing up a situation where they were hurting, I look at it as though as that they're still hurting over that.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't found that way of finding that healing.
Right.
That helps them. And sometimes they don't have that direction, or guidance on where they can start the healing process. And so I look at it as still like it's a form of grief. That the grief doesn't have, an end date on it. It's something that's continuous, and it depends on how deep the hurt is. So experiences that I've had, people where I notice that they keep bringing up the situation where they were hurt over, I tend to ask them, or I make comment and say, you're still hurting over this, and not to just dismiss it. I look at it as grief that, maybe I can find a way to help them find that process of healing, and offer some suggestions or guidance on where they might, start seeking out for themselves to get past that.
Mm-hmm.
I like to say, sometimes humiliation is a powerful thing. So sometimes you can be in a relationship or in a situation and your sixth sense, or you get that, that God whispered and said you shouldn't do it, but you do it anyway, or because you just want to be optimistic, or when you're just so caught up sometimes you can't see the forest for the trees. And then when you come out of it, you look back and there's this sense of humiliation that I knew better, or I should have known better, or something like that. Sometimes dealing with self-humiliation is hard to get past, because you're upset with yourself for it. You think, because you see it, and you know others see it, so you think others are like shame on you because you should have known better. So I think sometimes being humiliated with yourself plays a big role in being able to, let go and move on sometimes.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of factors and different things affect people different ways. So definitely not stating that so these are just kind of indications that people haven't healed. So not necessarily saying that they're taking too long to heal or passing judgment on the healing. But these are kind of just indications that someone hasn't healed, and we're gonna talk about steps to that at the end. Let me move on. So another indication is that some people become angry and bitter. So who had Ephesians 4:31-32? Was that you, Angel?
Yes. Get rid of all bitterness, rage, anger, harsh words, and slander, as well as all types of evil behavior. Instead, be kind to each other, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, just as God through Christ Jesus has forgiven you.
Yeah, so some people's response is to become bitter. So they're always negative, they're always mean, there's no joy in their life. And so their hurt has become a personality for them. So it's become their personality. So their responses to the world are based on the hurt that they had in the past. Based on the hurt that they had in the past.
They become bitter because they don't know how to let go of it.
Yeah. Well, I think all of these are because they haven't let go of it yet. They haven't healed from it yet. They haven't and like Kikwa said, sometimes it's a long process, but sometimes people don't address it or seek to get healed. But another thing people do is they seek revenge. Someone have Romans 12:19.
Yeah. My friends, do not try to punish others when they wrong you. Wait for God to punish them with his anger. It is written, I am the one who punishes. I will pay people back, says the Lord.
Yeah, so people want revenge. They're plotting to get them back. They got this plan. I'm going to do this with the kids, or I'm going to do this. They're plotting. How can I get this person back? They want to take revenge, and we definitely don't want to do that. And another one form of the revenge is slander. Who has Psalms 101:5?
I have that.
Okay.
Whoever slanders their neighbor in secret, I will put to silence. Whoever has haughty eyes and a proud heart, I will not tolerate.
All right, so slander is talking badly about somebody. So some people, they want to just talk about and badmouth the person that hurt them anytime they get, any chance they get, anytime they can talk to somebody about them. They want to, heard somebody say they curse it, nurse it, and rehearse it. Like every time they talk to somebody, they got negative stuff to say about the person. They want everybody to know how bad that person was. And they bring it up any opportunity they get. That they just want to slander the person's name. And that's their revenge. That's the revenge they're getting. So that's a sign that they haven't been healed. Let's see. Another result of not being healed is that it can impact your decision making. So it can impact your decision making. So hurt people sometimes, they'll make decisions today based on their emotions. They're trying to protect their emotions. They'll make a decision today to protect their emotions instead of protecting their future. So they're making is to protect their emotions today instead of protecting their future. So they're making decisions that aren't really long-term thinking. It's just to protect how I feel today. Like you talked about your friend at work. They go to work and they're telling people off. They're telling the boss off. They fly off the handle. It's just an emotional response. But I heard someone say your success at work is not always based on your qualifications. Sometimes it's based on how good you are at dealing with what happened at home. So sometimes when you're hurt, you make irrational decisions. I know Dave Chappelle, he's not typically mentioned in Bible studies, but he had a part of his show, he talked about when keeping it real goes wrong. He had example of people that they were in these situations and they could have let it go, but they decide, no, I'm going to keep it real. This guy said something disrespecting me, I'm going to say something, and it just went horribly wrong. It just went horribly wrong. They got beat up or they got lost a job, and all type of things happen so you make emotional decisions when you've been hurt versus long-term thinking decisions.
Yeah, those are the things that happen. That's why Scripture tells us, vengeance is mine. We're not supposed to seek that.
Right. Amen.
It will oftentimes backfire on you.
Yeah. And another thing that happens is people may get into rebound relationships. They just got a relationship, and to heal their hurt, they just jump into a relationship with the first person they see, just so they don't, the hurt, feel the loneliness, to feel the void.
That's what you're saying, it affects your thinking?
Yeah, affects your decisions. Make bad decisions.
Right.
That's where you take your bad baggage to the other person that doesn't need that baggage.
Right.
And you ruin that relationship even before it starts.
Mm-hmm. And another thing that happens is, somebody saying something. Another thing that happens is you can develop a hardened heart. A hardened heart. So who has Proverbs 28:14?
Yeah, I have Proverbs.
Okay. All right.
Blessed is the one who always trembles before God. And whoever hardens their heart falls into trouble. So
when you harden your heart, when you refuse to feel anymore, it leads into trouble. So when you harden your heart, sometimes you even harden your heart from God. You harden your heart from God. You harden your heart from relationships in general, and so you can even harden your heart from your relationship with God. You can't fully accept God's love. You can't accept any love now, and so. But two people can go through the same thing and come out differently. They say the same sun that melts ice hardens clay. The same sun that melts ice can harden clay. So two people can go through the same thing and come out differently based on how you respond to it, based on how you view it, based on how you interpret what happened and how you respond to it. So some people, once they become a victim of something, or they harden their heart and they say, well, you can't really judge me because this happened to me. But they harden their heart because they don't want to feel pain. They don't want to feel pain anymore. But to prevent that, they don't feel anything. So to prevent feeling pain, they don't really feel anything. They can't feel, because they're not vulnerable anymore. They can't really have an intimate relation because they don't open themselves up. So you can't really have an intimate relationship unless you open yourself up. And so they're protecting themselves, but they're also not fully living. It's a result of being hurt.
Getting life in abundance.
Yeah.
And missing.
And another thing they do is they have, once you're hurt, you can have an inability to trust people. Inability to trust people. That's so now I'm working on that as well. So what are some reasons that people don't trust people?
They've been hurt before.
Because they've been hurt.
They've been lied to.
They've been lied to. What'd you say, Tasha? They lie?
Yes, people lie.
People lie?
And they also change their mind. They like wishy-washy kind of thing. So all that in there,
Okay. Yeah. So once you've been hurt, sometimes you may not know who to trust. So you don't know who to trust. So this one hit me hard. So you don't know who to trust, but then it's also because you don't trust your own ability to choose. So you don't trust your ability to choose the right person now. This person, you thought this person was this, but they weren't that. So now you don't trust your own judgment because you've been wrong before. So you don't trust your judgment. But also, you're afraid that, well, what if somebody breaks my trust again? So it's like, I don't know who to trust. I don't know if I can trust myself to choose who to trust. And I don't know if I can take it if somebody else breaks my trust. So that's why it's hard to trust. And so the first step is to gain trust in yourself. Okay. And then the last one, which I'm sure is none of us here, but the last one is some people, after they become hurt, this is kind of this is our TikTok intermission moment. So after they become hurt, they become the person that they hated. They become the person that hurt them. So this person, they were with a cheater, so now they cheat. Now they're a cheater. They were with a liar, so now they lie. They become the thing that they hated. They become the thing that they hated in the other person. And so I took most of my videos out, but I left this one in. It was interesting. So it was one woman. She was giving advice. She was giving dating advice, and her advice was so it's not like this is like kind of like a celebrity type person, semi pseudo celebrity. But her dating advice was, well, you're dating these toxic men or whatever, and they may cheat. So what you should do is you should cheat on them first. That was her advice. You should cheat on them first. And which is they're like, because then once they do cheat, then you don't, it doesn't really matter as much because you already. So there's a lot of bad advice there, a lot of bad advice in the world. So we gotta make sure we temper. But this was a response that somebody gave to that, which was interesting. So this was a response to that advice. Let's see.
I cheated on me the whole time. And you know what? You don't have to feel bad about it because you cheated just in case.
had to listen to that video more than one time just to make sure I heard that correctly. She's out here saying that you should cheat just in case. Usually I have something to say about a video, but this time I've got nothing to say. It's not really even worth my breath, and the only people that would agree with it are clowns. But my problem with it is it's going out to hundreds of thousands of people. That is a big platform you're playing with, and that is so irresponsible. And your more recent video about how you keep aligning with these toxic men that are asking you to update them every 30 minutes and they should stop doing that. Well, guess what? Your relationships are a reflection of yourself. So I wonder what the problem is.
Right.
Wow, that was a debate.
Michael, where do you find these TikToks?
Wow. On TikTok.
On TikTok.
I'd like to hear how that conversation ended. That was pretty good.
Well, but
I thought you just danced on TikTok. I didn't know you could. I thought you just danced.
well, the thing is, that's why like the big thing about the algorithm. Once you start like watching a certain type of videos, it'll start sending you those types of things. So and they put you.
They Carmichael or
No.
a gentleman looking at a woman on a video and then responding.
Yeah, it was
I missed that part.
Yeah, it was he was yeah, I should have explained it. So yeah, you can respond to somebody else's video. Like you don't have to know them or anything. So like you can react and respond to videos. That's one of the things they do on TikTok. Like, yeah. So they have two different channels. Hers is a lot bigger than his, and I guess he felt the need to respond to that one, cause she.
Well, Michael, I think that goes with that saying that hurt people hurt people.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
So how do you do that little clap though, the reaction? I want to give her a reaction. How do I give?
Oh, well, we could do that.
How do I give Kikwa a reaction?
Oh, Kikwa. Oh, clap. Oh, okay.
Yeah, you go into the more.
More
at the somewhere on your screen. Like it'll say mute, start video, share, participants more. So click on more. And then in there, it should give you a few like emojis to, so that those are what I use. I have like 6 of them. Okay. Do you see them on your screen?
I just have 2. I just have the clap and the thumbs up. But that's, I'll play around with it. So Kikwa, give you claps and thumbs up. Haha. Hurt people hurt people. That is.
Will you report back to us next week then? So next time we meet, for those of us who are not on TikTok. Let us know.
She's gonna give me homework.
I don't think it's a series. Oh no, you won't get homework to go on TikTok.
It sounds like you're determined to find out.
No, I don't think she's gonna respond. I don't think she's gonna respond.
Well, should you find out, let us know.
Well, I think that'll probably be the end of it. I don't think she's gonna respond because her platform is a lot bigger than his. So, unlike
okay.
Unlike.
I don't get it.
Oh well, it'd be like if like you went on Pastor Brian's Twitter or some stranger and said something, and he may not respond. If TD Jakes went on there and said something, he's gonna have to respond. But if somebody who is kind of unknown goes and says something, most people will you can't respond to everything. You're gonna have haters, so you don't want to. They say don't feed the trolls.
So when you said her platform might be larger than his.
So she has hundreds of thousands of followers, unfortunately.
Okay, so the number of people is what you're trying
Yeah, to bigger celebrity.
Yeah.
So it's like any. But let's see.
Sounds wiser than her.
Well, no, I mean he's giving sound advice on his channel. She's giving. Anyway, we won't get into it. It's like it's like a reality show. It's like if a reality show star comes on there and is giving you advice on something versus a professional. So.
Yeah.
All right, so we've got an option here. We've got time for one of these two. So, all right, we will do. So next week we have. I took forgiveness out because that didn't fit. So I think we will do the. Yeah, unfortunately, let's see. We will do the healing exercise next week. Maybe I'll add some more to it. So today I'll give you the conclusion today. Beauty for ashes. Beauty for ashes. So Isaiah 61, 1 through 3 says, "The Spirit of the Lord God is on me, because the Lord has anointed me to preach the good news to the poor. He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives and freedom to the prisoners, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor and the day of God's vengeance, to comfort all who mourn, to console in Zion, to give them a crown of beauty for ashes, the oil of joy for mourning, and a garment of praise for a spirit of despair. So they will be called oaks of righteousness, the planting of the Lord, that he may be glorified." So this is God saying that he's going to give you beauty for ashes. Beauty for ashes literally means a crown for ashes. He's going to exchange your ashes for a crown. It literally means an ornament. Sorry, literally twice. So it's a crown for ashes, but literally means ornamental headdress. So it's like a tiara. So a tiara or a crown you're going to get. So these are worn in times of joy. So, and he's going to replace the ashes, which are ashes of mourners. The mourners have ashes on their head. They wear ashes. So he's going to replace your ashes, your mourning, with the tiara, with the crown of glory that's worn at times of joy. And a little bit of Bible study there. So the two Hebrew words there are, actually I'll really quick do some real Bible study. So for words, you can use Blue Letter Bible. So Blue Letter Bible, I looked it up. So the two words in Hebrew are beauty for ashes. And so it's in Hebrew 6. Huh?
What verse?
Isaiah 61:3.
Oh.
61:3.
Yeah, it's going to give you beauty for ashes. And so if we look, the word beauty is pe'er. And the word ashes is epher. So it's actually they rhyme. So we're missing part of the beauty of it. So it's kind of like, when someone says, hey, he's the Italian stallion. Or they say rumble in the jungle. So the fact that they rhyme, if you translate it to somebody else, it's not going to have the same type of thing to it. Because we say Italian stallion, it kind of rhymes. So we get another extra thing. But if you just translate it it doesn't have the same meaning. So they're saying beauty for ashes. They're saying you're going to give you pe'er.
Strong's H 6287. Pe'er. Pe'er.
For epher.
Strong's H 665. Afer. Afer.
So it was so it was kind of poetic. He's going to give you beauty for ashes. But he's also going to give you an oil of joy for your mourning. The oil of joy is ointment that's poured on your head. It's poured when you go to a feast, a happy feast. You get this oil poured on your head. And he's going to exchange that for your mourning. So for your mourning, he's going to give you an oil of joy. And he's going to give you a garment of praise. A garment of praise. So it's a brightly colored garment indicative of thankfulness instead of despair and low spirits. And he's going to make you a tree of righteousness. So a tree is strong. It symbolizes mankind being strong versus a bowed down tree or a bowed down reed. So this is what God is promising, that he's going to exchange for you, so your future is going to look bright. It's going to make you more valuable. Has anyone heard of kintsugi? Kintsugi? Kintsugi. So kintsugi is a Japanese word. It's the Japanese practice that highlights and enhances the breaks in pottery, adding value to an object. So kin means golden and repair means sugi. So they take broken pottery, they actually break it, and then they put it back together using gold. They put it back together using gold. So what they say is it's a traditional Japanese art using precious metals, liquid gold, liquid silver, or lacquer dusted and powdered gold to bring together pieces of broken pottery items, at the same time enhancing the breaks. The technique consists of joining fragments and giving them new, more refined aspects. Every repaired piece is unique because the randomness with which ceramic shatters of the irregular patterns form that enhance the use of metal. So here we see kintsugi. This is an example of kintsugi.
Yeah.
So they broke the bowl and they repaired it. So the bowl was broken, so it was worthless. It was of less value than it originally started. But then they put it back together. They added gold to it. They took all the broken pieces and they added gold to it. They made it to the point where now this is an extremely valuable piece of pottery. Far more valuable than it was when it started. And so that's what God is doing to you. That's what God is doing to you. So it's taking all of your broken pieces, So now that you're going through the healing process, He's taking your broken pieces, but it's not, and the goal isn't to restore you to back before you had that painful experience. The goal is to restore you to where you're more valuable, more precious than you were before you started. So God is going to repair you. God is going to heal you. God is going to fix you and to make you to a higher point, a majestic quality to you once you are healed. And that's where we're headed.
That's a great metaphor. I really love that. That's good.
Let's walk in the way. Let's seek the truth and live the life. Any comments, Tasha? Or Patrice?
I wanted to say,
Tasha. Go ahead, Tasha.
what a friend we have in Jesus. That we can bring all of our grief and sins to bear. What a privilege it is to carry everything
to God in prayer. Amen.
That's all I want to say.
Amen. What a friend. We could take it all to Jesus. We can take it all to Jesus.